Everyone heard and read about the coffee prices and the crisis, as you name it, and it hits the region in general quite hard. Maybe some region are more than others. So talking about the Levant, I think people here are more sensitive. So businesses are struggling to cope with these prices, and they are left with two options: either they increase the price or they're like, I don't know, absorb some of the losses. And on the other hand, you have the consumers who are more sensitive, less acceptance to any change on their daily cup of coffee, or it's part of their routine, the day-to-day life. So they are more sensitive toward this.
On June 9 and 10 this year, our live online workshop, Biochar for Farming, is happening in English and Spanish with returning specialist professors Angela Barrero and Morillo Bettarello. Tickets are $10 for farmers and $100 for everybody else, which includes 9 pay-it-forward tickets for farmers who can't pay the ticket price. Head to mapitforward.coffee/workshops or check the show notes for links. Welcome to the Map It Forward Middle East podcast, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of an awesome 5-part series with Shireen Muhaisen and James Lynes. I've got it right like 3 times out of 4 now, I think, but I've said it Lynes before. It was incorrect, and I apologize, James. James Lynes from Bunni Coffee. We're talking about building a business today in the Middle East, and I think it's fair to say, would you guys agree that the Middle East is still, even though it was the birthplace of roasted coffee, it's still an emerging market with regards to, let's say, the Western way of drinking coffee? Would you guys agree?
Yeah, that's where the cultural plays a difference, right? So it's culturally traditional, I think, to have a Turkish coffee, a salad, whatever. And culturally in the West, it's more of a corner shop latte, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I guess as the world has been evolving, like I came into coffee out of the corporate world. I was a senior business analyst at IBM. And I left that because I didn't want to do corporate anymore and started working as a barista in a cafe right when we didn't even have the word specialty coffee yet. We knew it was like this artisan thing, and there was a difference between Lavazza and Illy versus the stuff that we were doing, but we didn't really know it was called specialty coffee. And over that time, we have started to recognize that our industry is reaching a precipice, let's say. And Map It Forward has been calling it a coffee crisis over the last couple of years. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the impact the global coffee crisis is going to have on business owners and consumers in this region. Because then the reason I kind of connect the idea that this is an emerging market for coffee and the coffee crisis is because I suspect, I have no idea if I'm right, that different regions are going to experience the coffee crisis in different ways. For some business owners, they're going to be able to look at this as an opportunity to push the industry in a direction, and for others, they're going to start to see a collapse in their industry and a reorganization of an industry, in my opinion. What do you guys think about this crisis?
Everyone heard and read about the coffee prices and the crisis, as you name it, and it hits the region in general quite hard. Maybe some region are more than others. So talking about the Levant, I think people here are more sensitive. So businesses are struggling to cope with these prices, and they are left with two options: either they increase the price or they're like, I don't know, absorb some of the losses. And on the other hand, you have the consumers who are more sensitive, less acceptance to any change on their daily cup of coffee, or it's part of their routine, the day-to-day life. So they are more sensitive toward this. In Jordan, last month, some brands increased their prices, and Jordanians didn't take it very well. And some Jordanians, they're talking that the government should have some intervention to regulate prices, but because they don't, yeah, they can't accept. I mean, any change on this. It's for them. It's essential. It's part of their daily.
It's funny, hey. People see coffee the same way they see wheat and flour in this part of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the essentials, right? The daily essentials. And even to add to Shireen's words, I mean, even there was a movement, and some people were boycotting the people who raised prices. So it shows you the reaction of the price sensitivity factor here. And then we're talking here about the mass market, not specialty market. But it's very much price sensitivity plays the largest role, I'd say, in Jordan, or let's say the Levant as a whole.
What I found really... Go ahead, James.
For specialty coffee, I think it's a bit different. I think that specialty coffee in Jordan, at least, is going to be much more in keeping with outside of the region, in terms of there is slightly more acceptance that the coffee price has gone up. The end user and the customer, or the client in general, are more aware of the situation of coffee, of how it's gone up worldwide, not just in Jordan. So I think that that's a different level of people. Some who are more, let's say, world aware and slightly more accepting of the increase in price, as opposed to the mass market, where I think it's much more, let's say, they're not willing to accept that they could increase price.
It's back to the first point we mentioned about these two words, the specialty coffee and the commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, here you're talking to someone who wants to know about coffee, who understand, who read, who follow the news, who stand behind the increase of prices, what's happening globally. But on the other side, you have the commercial or the traditional consumer who's loyal to something, and he's used to something, they're used to something, and they're more sensitive to any change of this, environment they have.
I find it really interesting here in the GCC that when I speak to people about the coffee crisis, they don't acknowledge that it's real. And for those who are listening who don't know what we mean by coffee crisis, what I mean is it's not just about price. There's a supply issue that's happening that is really important. The climate is impacting the amount of coffee that is able to be grown. It is confusing the trees. They are flowering when they shouldn't be flowering. They are letting go of those flowers. They are having real issues turning those flowers into fruit. But we have droughts, we have La Nina, we have El Nino, we have a whole bunch of things that are really wreaking havoc on the plants. Also, another part of this crisis is the logistical issues that are happening, as we were talking about in the last episode. On top of that, another issue that we're having is access to labour at origin. So that even if there is cherries on the trees, they can't find the labour that's necessary to pick the fruit. The fruit sits on the tree. It becomes... essentially it could become a problem for diseases and fungus, etc., etc., etc. The quality of the soil is becoming a problem. All of these things together in previous decades may have been okay if they were just one thing here. When coffee leaf rust, it was terrible, but we weren't necessarily dealing with coffee leaf rust and 15 other things that were happening at the same time. What we're seeing now is a convergence of a lot of things all at the same time, and we're calling that a coffee crisis. And what I am struggling with as someone who lives in the GCC, speaking to people who work in coffee, is there's this hesitation. And I think it's more for cultural reasons than it is for anything else. There's a hesitation to acknowledge that there is a coffee crisis, or there is a crisis of any sorts. And I think that could be dangerous if people don't want to acknowledge that there is an actual crisis. Go ahead, James.
No, it's. I think it's easy to be far removed from the situation. I mean, from our perspective, it's the financial and logistical issue that affects us mainly, right? So We discussed the financial just now, the logistics as well. We mentioned about how this is our bread and butter. This is our lifeline. So logistics, we need to master. We need to do very well because we cannot afford for this to go wrong. But that's what affects us. I mean, beyond that, we are far removed from origin until we go to origin and visit farmers, right? So I think that it's very easy to dislocate yourself from the reality on the ground because we are just seeing the financial and logistical side of things more than anything else. As soon as we go to origin and we come back refreshed and revived, and we remember the reality on the ground, and we remember all of these things that are happening. So I think that as a consumer, you are again a step back from this process, right? We are going to origin and seeing it with our own eyes. The consumer will rely on what we tell them.
Right.
So we share some information and we share this, but what we see, they see much less. So I think that it's easy as a local consumer, let's say in Jordan or anywhere in GCC or anywhere in the world, you are quite far removed from the reality on the ground at origin. So I think that in many ways, to ignore or to deny it exists, I think is a bit extreme, but to not be fully aware of what's really happening, totally. I mean, that's very logical.
And even business owners, right? Like that's the part of it that really I'm struggling with. That trying to convince business owners here that have roasteries that don't go to origin, they count on an importer, or they, use the DMCC to source their coffee. These are places where I'm struggling to help people to understand that the crisis that we're experiencing right now goes way beyond just price. Yes, coffee's getting more expensive, but guys, you've got to pay attention to the exactly right. Like there's more coming.
The barriers. It's usually the limits of how they operate, right? So if they see it as a financial issue, it means that they're only sourcing spot coffees, for example. If they see it as a price and logistical issue, they are sourcing coffees probably FOB without going to origin. So I think that what they represent in many ways shows you the barriers in which they operate.
And what do you think the potential? I know we can only speculate, but where do you see that going?
What part in particular?
Like that mindset. Where do you see that mindset for business owners? Let's say, no disrespect intended, but there's an intentional ignorance there. Whether it's because that's the way the supply chain has been set up, or because that's just they've got too much to deal with. They don't have any time to worry about logistics and what's happening in coffee or whatnot. But that ignorance is going to be a defining factor of the future of somebody's business, in my opinion. How do you see that playing out?
I mean, that just depends on who they are as a brand, right? So as we said at the start, we are let's say a values-focused brand. So it goes without saying that we are involved in all of that process. If you're only interested in getting spot coffees, then I think that you define who you are as a brand or as a company in just getting spot coffees. So beyond that, it's not really going to affect you beyond the price. So I think that it's much more how they have set themselves up to operate. That will just continue as is. If that ends up being a weak point for them to then adjust and reshape or to strengthen their company in other ways, then so be it. That's what they've chosen as their business model. But I think that it will only grow as far as they've defined themselves.
But let's talk about the coffee businesses, not the roasters, the coffee shops. And just to be fair to them, many coffee shops now, they understand this value and they want to be part of this movement. They want to be part of this culture, to offer something that has more depth. So it's not, many of them, they are not necessarily looking for a cheaper price of coffee. They're looking for the more important factors, the sustainability, the reliability of your partner, of your coffee roaster.
I would like to say that I agree with you. I wish that was the case. My lived experience is that cafe owners have become so aware of how thin their margins are that right now, with the rate that prices are going up, that's a luxury to be able to care about anything outside of the survival of their own business right now. I think a lot of people come into this industry expecting that the profitability in cafes are very high. And
True.
that's not the reality of it at all. And when they do get into it, because here at Map4, we call it the success fallacy. They see that there are so many cafes that are open, so it must be a profitable business, right? Why would there be so many cafes if it wasn't profitable? And then they get into the business and they realize, like, oh, this is not the way I thought it was going to be. And then we have the price crisis become more and more and more obvious as the months go by. And what they realize is all of these amazing ideas that I had for taking care of my people and taking care of the supply chain and, you know, doing all of this direct buying and et cetera, that's now put on the back burner. I just need to figure out how I'm going to survive and keep my cafe open.
Yeah.
And I
but again, that goes back to how they define themselves.
Exactly.
Difference of concepts.
Yeah. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's who they are as a company, then that's it. If it's very much a kind of a facade thing, then that can also work. I mean, if that's what they want from that business, then that's great, you know. But for us, it's deeper than that.
Correct with them.
Yeah, 100%.
Again, why I advocate so heavily for values-driven businesses that are built on actual really good bones, because when crises come, you have a better understanding of how to pivot and duck and weave and do all these things in order to stay alive. There's a really interesting thing that I want to ask you guys about, that if people are listening to this and they're not in this region, they will find this rather interesting and different. Summer. Let's talk about summer. Because while in the United States and in Australia and parts of Europe, summer is a very lovely, beautiful time, I have been in Amman during the summer. It was actually my first experience of what 50 degrees felt like anywhere. And I was only there for 24 hours. And now I live in legit very, very hot weather every summer. But people might not realize that in places like Dubai and the UAE and other parts of the GCC, people leave. Like a huge part of the population just gets up and leaves this region and goes to Europe or goes to different parts of the world and spends the summer there. So people do not spend summer here. Do you guys have that experience in Jordan? Because I suspect a big part of your population is people who are more socioeconomically, you know, they have a little bit more money because of specialty, you know, they're buying specialty coffee. They have a little bit more money. Do you find that they're the kind of people who are leaving?
It's more about school break, I think. Yeah, that's better than the summer escape.
There's some overlap there, though, right?
The summer escape is when someone has a house in London and they go to the summer house and come back.
Correct. They put their Bugatti on a plane and then they go over there and they drive their Bugatti off the plane.
But to be fair as well, it comes back to the two regions we discussed beforehand. I mean, the Levant, honestly speaking, the weather in the Levant is beautiful. I mean, it's summer is typically at a stable 35. Okay, sometimes you can have a heat wave for a few days. But it's lovely. Yeah. Being British, I love the summer. It's 6 months of fantastic weather. But you go to the GCC and it's harsh. It's tough. We lived in Kuwait. Summer is it's very tough, very tough. But I think that goes back again. The GCC, that part of the Middle East, has a very, very tough summer. For Jordan, as the rest of the Levant, I think it's for me almost ideal. That's the weather and temperature, 35, 32, 33. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Syria is beautiful in the summer. I love it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Here, the joke is that it's 20 degrees less than hell.
And getting warmer.
And getting warmer. It's May and it is 40 degrees today. So we've got, it's still technically spring here, folks. So that's kind of wild. But you can imagine how hard it is for business owners who have roasteries and cafes, what it's like when you get a mass exodus out of their cities.
Of course.
This is a real problem. And we're going to address that. In the next series, we're going to be talking with Matt and Kim from Raw, and they are in Dubai. So we're going to kind of explore some of that with them. But okay, let's let's go into our next episode. And in the final episode of this series, folks, we're going to talk about what does the future of coffee in the Middle East look like. So join us for that. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Pt4. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.